Find duplicate elements in Python list. This is one of the most asked question in Python coding interview. Today in this video, we are going to solve that in three different ways. One is the brute force technique, which is we want to avoid that. Next one is going to be the most Pythonic and interview way. Then the next one is going to be how you would do the same thing if you were doing for your own project in Python at your work. So let's dive into that and let's see how three different ways we can solve the same problem in Python.
As we mentioned, we will try three different ways. One is the brute force technique, which we don't want to do in the interview and at your work, so that you know what not to do while coding in Python or interviewing. And the second approach is going to be the set tracking approach, that is the most advisable in Python interviews, and also the Pythonic way. If you're doing this for your day-to-day work, then how you can use the built-in libraries to achieve this goal. So let's define a function. So define a function to find duplicates in the list. And I will say def find duplicates, and I will give the name called brute. And in that, I will pass on any list. So the list of the values that we want to find duplicate elements. And here, next I will do is initialize empty list called duplicates. And I will just pass nothing on that empty list to store the duplicate values from the given list. And then I will run a for loop. Basically, I will run a nested for loop here, and that takes a big O of n square. That takes the squared magnitude of the total time that Python code will execute. So I will say for I in range, so I will go up to the length of the LST. So if the elements in the list are 10, it will go up to the 10th element, right? So that's what the length of the LST is about. And I will write another for loop, nested for loop, saying for j in range I plus 1. The reason is because I want to compare the first element with the next element. That is why I'm using I plus 1 there, and up to the length of the LST as well. So up to the last element of LST. I have gone through both the iteration of the for loop. Now I will compare the values of I and j, and according to that, I will append the values in the list called duplicates. So to do that, I will say if LST I, first element in the list, is the same as LST j, if that's the case, and also the LST I, the element that is not already in duplicates, then I will say duplicates.append, because I can use the append function because this is the list, and then I will append the element that I'm looping through to the empty list duplicate, so that I can keep storing those duplicate values. And if that is not already there, then only I'm appending that. That is why it will avoid any duplicate. So if it will check if that is not already there, then it will store that value so that I can go and check if that is duplicate or not. At the end, I will return the duplicates because it will only contain the duplicate values if that is not already there. So it will just check iteratively for each element through the multiple nested for loops. So that is why this will take significantly long amount of time if the number of elements in the list are significantly larger. We can test if this actually works or not. I will define a LST1, that is the list of numbers. Let's say 1, 2, 3, again 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 6, 7, 9, 9. And I have defined a list here, and let's apply the function if it actually works or not. I will say find duplicates brute force technique. I'll pass on LST1 that I have just defined above, and I will run that. As I expected, I have duplicates of 3, duplicate of 6, duplicate of 9, and that's what exactly I have got here. However, if we want to track the timer of this code execution, it will be significantly lengthier if these elements are in thousands of tens of thousands, if you're working on a significantly large size of the data. Now, let's move to the next approach and see what is the most optimal interview style coding for the same problem. Now, the next technique is set tracking approach. We will have a sets of the values that will store the duplicates, and this is one of the most efficient and most Pythonic way to perform in the interview. So let's dive into that and see how exactly that's going to work. Let's begin with defining function as similar as before, and I will say find duplicates, and I'll give the name set just to distinguish two different functions. And I will give the parameter called lst as before, and I will initialize a couple of empty sets. I will say the empty sets to store the duplicate values and scene values. And now I will say scene equals empty set. I'll have to say set open close parentheses to have the empty set. In the list, we could just say open close parentheses and it will just do that. Now, I will also initialize the empty set for duplicate values, and in that I will just simply say set. The reason behind set is because the sets do not contain duplicate elements on that. We can store the unique elements that are in the scene and in the duplicates as well. Now, once we initialize scene and the duplicate being empty sets, we'll have a for loop to iterate through the list exactly once in the linear time. I will say for item, or you can say anything, item, I, or any other word or character you can use in lst, the parameter, the list that we have here in our function. In each element, each item inside the lst, I want to say if item is already in scene, then I will say duplicates dot add. In the set, we have to say add to include or add the values within the set. Now, what we have done here is if for each element in the lst, if item is already there in the scene, then that is duplicate value. So because that is already available in the scene, then add that value in the duplicates. If that gets added twice, the set function will make that as a unique and only one value. Otherwise, just add that element of the list to the scene, because the reason behind is if that is unique, its unique value, then keep adding into that scene. But if it is duplicate that is already available in the scene, then add that value to the duplicates so that we can validate that the value was already in the scene. So that is duplicates, and let's add into the duplicates set. That's how we will be storing unique duplicate values in the duplicates. Once we run that iteration, at the last, we will do is return the list of duplicates, because the reason is, as of now, we have this duplicates being the set. So we want to return the list of elements that are duplicate values, duplicate elements in the lst list. This is how we will be able to efficiently find out the duplicate values in the given list. This way it will be with the big O of n time complexity, it will run in the linear time. If I would like to check how does exactly that work, I can run the find duplicate, the set one that we have just defined, and I will pass on the lst1, the list that I had defined earlier, and run it. It is 369. We have seen that list over here, the list lst1 1 2 3 3 4 5 6 6 6 7 9 9, and these 3 6 and 9 had duplicate, and we have already seen that, and we have now just tested and confirmed that it will work. Very last one and most shortcut one, that you can use the predefined function counter to count the each elements of the list, and you can check if the counter, the value, is greater than 1 or not, and that's what exactly we will be seeing now. So let's define that function that uses the counter function. But before that, let's import the counter. I will say from collections import counter. So counter is one of the functions in the module collections. Once we import that, we can define function called find duplicates using the counter function. And I will pass on the LST, the list that I want to count the duplicate or find out the duplicate value. Then I will say counts equals, I will run the counter function on LST. It's that simple. All now we have to do is do the list comprehension. Return the each individual element or item for item and the count, because the counts here, the counter function, is going to give you the actual element and the count of that element in the list in counts.items. I will show you how exactly that counts look like at the later time. And then if count is greater than 1. So what exactly I'm doing here in this list comprehension? I'm saying, hey, give me the elements inside inside the counts.items. So if you check, so for example, I will say counter, I'll call the counter function on the LST, right? LST1 that I had defined the function earlier. It will give 1 repeats once, 2 repeats once, 3 repeats twice, 4 repeats once, 5 repeats once, 6 repeats 3 times, 7 repeats once, 9 repeats twice. So from here, so in the counts.items, item means the item 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I'm getting item, these values inside the list, and the count of those values, how many times they have the value. So in those, I want to only get item, so only get the items, only if items, the count, the value, count value is greater than 1. That means the value has a duplicate. If it is 9 is twice in the list, that means that's a duplicate. 6 has 3 times and 3 has 2 times. So that's how exactly we are going to get the duplicate values. So basically I'm saying, hey, return me the items that have a count of more than 1. That means we're going to get 3, 6, and the 2, and the 9. That's exactly the most efficient or most shortcut way using the predefined function called counter in the module collections. That's a fastest way we could achieve this, and with the least line of code using counter function. We can just quickly check that using the counter function, the find duplicates counter function, and pass on the LST1, and you will get 3, 6, 9. So this way we can also do the most Pythonic way and most least line of code using the least line of code, and you will achieve the same objective that you have accomplished using this function, and also using the nested for loop, which is not very recommended. It's a brute force technique to do that, which is definitely not recommended on specifically at your work or in the Python coding interview.